All right. So we're still dealing with RPMs. I did show the basic technique of how to install, check and remove an RPM before the pause. Now we'll look at an example going online, downloading an RPM and making use of it. So in this example, I will use the RPM technique to install a program named PuTTY. So this is actually an example of an application, just like Thunderbird earlier. It's an application that you can run in Linux. My previous example, FTP, was not an application. It was an additional CentOS command or package that I installed. So these things can be used either to install additional CentOS components or to install other programs. So my next example then is to install another program which is named PuTTY. So if I try to execute PuTTY now, if I type PuTTY, see, I have already installed it here, but I'll show now the details of the technique of how to install it. So here's what it does. But now don't worry again about what the program does. That's not the issue. This is something we'll be using in the next module. But now what's important right now is to practice the technique of installing something, in this case using the RPM technique. Right? So I'm still connected to the internet. So to do what I did for this is the following. I went online. I'm already connected to the internet as I've done before earlier this morning. So I went to Firefox. And I went to Google. And I looked for CentOS 7 PuTTY install or download. So you see, one clear way to do it is the RPM technique. To tell you here, this is the RPM available. And typically, by the way, when you're setting RPMs in a system like this, CentOS, look for the extensions x86-64. x86 identifies the kind of motherboards we're using, either Intel or AMD based, and 64 means 64 bits. Other RPMs may be designed for other types of hardware platforms. All right? So you see this for CentOS 7 and EPL x86-64. What does EPL means? It's the Red Hat Enterprise Linux server, which is equivalent to CentOS. And again, it's based on Intel or AMD platforms with 64 bits. So that's the RPM I'm looking for. If there's more information about it. And to install it, I went down to the page here, install how to, and there is here the actual download link. So open link. Actually, it should do it directly from there. Let me do it again, sorry. So install how to. Open link in new tab. Sorry. it should give the save as option directly. It's not doing it right now. Let's go to packages. No. All right. Just a second. I'll do it again, okay? Close this. Or if I navigate from here, packages, and looking for PuTTY, alphabetical here. Lots of RPM, as you can see. Okay, we'll get there. Here we go. This is the RPM. And you save the file. Now when you save it, where does it go? By default, it goes into the download directory under your home directory. Meaning, to go to my home directory, I'm looking as a root user right now. So I'll go to my home directory, and under it, there's directory downloads. I'll clear the screen maybe. So I'm in my home directory /root. Under it, there is a download directory. So that's where, you see now, it was there already because I died. Now I got a second copy of it. Okay, so I'll delete the second copy. So basically you get the RPM in this downloads directory. I'll delete the second copy so it'll be easier to run it. So RM, although now it's, okay, I'll put RM asterisk 1. So it will delete only that one there. Okay, right. So RM, I'll put asterisk colon this 1 asterisk. Here we go. So the DR1, no, I don't want to remove it. So now I have, this is your, when you download your file, this is what you get basically. Me, I got a second copy because this already was there, so I downloaded the second time. And once you get the file, you just execute, just as I did before the break there, rpm-i with the name of the file. So I've already done it here, that's why PuTTY was already running for me. So let me recap the steps if you have any questions first. So basically, let me clear the screen and go over the steps again quickly. So I was looking for a packaged program called PuTTY. So I went online and first I went to Google and I typed, I'll show it again there. So I typed CentOS 7 PuTTY download. By the way, PuTTY also has a version for Windows. It's open source. You can install it also on Windows 10. And I found this page for a specific RPM for CentOS 7. Then to get the RPM, I went down to that how to download section, install how to, and I went to this link, and then there was a long list of alphabetical packages there. So I'm not going to do it again, but I went to packages and I went to P for PuTTY. And then I just went down the list to find PuTTY there. And there was one PuTTY RPM I clicked on, and I clicked on Saved As. And when you save it, it goes into your downloads directory. So you go to your home directory. /root, and under it there is a downloads directory. That's where the file will be saved. And there it is. This is the file that you will get. And just execute what we learned earlier before the break there. You do rpm-i with the file name to install it. Once you do, you'll be able to execute PuTTY from anywhere. Just type PuTTY. It executes the program. So again, don't worry about what the program does. The important thing right now is to learn the technique of how to install a package. Any questions on this one? All right, so we have seen two techniques so far. The TAR technique, which is the older technique, let's say, and then PuTTY, which, not PuTTY, RPM, which is actually a very good technique. So RPM, we have seen two examples. One with the installation DVD. I installed FTP from there. And this last technique was to go online and download and install the PuTTY package as an RPM. So this was a nice example when you saw PuTTY PuTTY, when you do RPM minus I, you'll install very easily. Within a few seconds, it will be done and you will be able to run the program. But unfortunately, RPM is not always this easy. I'll show you an example where you'll see what I mean. Now, to show you my point, and then this will introduce the next technique, I'll go back to the installation DVD there. Still mounted, so I'll go back to Media DVD. And now, again, I'll go to Packages. And I'll show you a package that eventually, in a few modules, in module number 3, we'll be using later. So it's a package called YP-bind. Actually, there are a few packages that start with YP. So I'll do ls YP asterisk. See there, this RPMs start with YP. Again, we see later what this does. But now, these things are not installed by default. If I do RPM minus Q YP-bind, you see it's not installed by default, but eventually we'll be needing this. So let's say I'll attempt to install this one as an RPM the same way as I did for FTP. Okay, so I'll clear the screen. Again, ls. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I'd like to install YP-bind now. So I'll do RPM minus I YP-bind. So in case of FTP, it looked like a charm, right? I just press enter, and within a few seconds it was installed and available. And now look what's going to happen here. It says failed dependencies. YP tools is needed by YP-bind. So a dependency means one RPM depends on another one. So if you want, what it's telling me here is that if you want to install YP-bind, you can't do it right away because it needs YP tools. And now it means, you might say, all right, it's not a big deal. We see YP tools here. So let's first install YP tools and then we can install YP-bind. So let's try that. So I'll do then RPM minus I YP tools. It's YP-tools. Now look what it says. Now it says YP-bind is needed for YP tools. So we're running in a circle, right? I try to install YP-bind, it tells me you need YP tools. I try to install YP tools, it tells me you need YP-bind. So what do I do here? See, here we have a problem now with RPMs. It doesn't mean that there's no solution. It's just that it's hard now. I'm stuck in dependencies. Okay? So whenever this happens, the good news is that we have another technique to deal with this kind of situation, because resolving this kind of dependencies might be time consuming and may require a lot of efforts. But at this point, do you see the problem? So depending on the package, depending on the RPM package you're trying to install, you may or may not run into this kind of problem. When I did FTP, when I did PuTTY, it was straightforward. There were no dependencies. But now for YP tools, I do have a problem here. Or YP-bind, I do have a problem. Okay? So before I show the solution, I'll also show you that the same problem might happen when you try to remove an RPM. So now there's an RPM in my system called bind. See, if I do RPM minus Q bind. In fact, this is something we'll be using in the next module. This is a DNS server package. So it's there, it's installed. Now let's say for whatever reason, I need to remove this. So if I do, we have seen earlier, RPM minus E to remove it, bind. So again, I have a problem with dependencies here. It's telling me other RPMs depend on this. So before you can remove this one, you have to remove the other ones. Okay, so this dependency issue may happen whether you try to install or remove an RPM. And in some cases, it may be very time consuming. If it's only one dependency, it's not a big deal. But as you have seen with the YP tables, YP binder, it might take a lot of time and effort before you can finally resolve the issue of dependencies. So this now opens the door to the third technique, which is, whenever possible, the best. It's the easier and most user-friendly technique, as we're about to see now. But RPMs, when there are no dependencies, are very nice. You see my previous two examples, FTP, PuTTY, they work like a charm. So it's definitely worth giving it a try. But if you run into dependencies, fortunately, there's a third technique available. But a third technique definitely requires to be online. Okay? So before I show you any questions. So the third technique is referred to as YUM install, the YUM technique. And I'll show how it works and then we'll explain more. Right? So again, this requires for your machine to be on the internet, because it will basically find and download the package on the internet. It will install it automatically. So I'll do it. So I'm still online. I didn't change anything for that. I'm still on the internet, on the external switch. So I'd like to install now YP-bind, for which I came across a dependency problem here. So again, once you're connected to the internet, it's very easy. There's nothing more to configure here. I'm online. I can also verify with the fact that I am able to run Firefox and connect to sites online. But I don't need Firefox. I don't need to run YUM install. We don't use a web browser. Use the command line. But I'm just verifying that I am online right now. I can go to Google. But YUM install, you can even do it when you don't have GUI. You can do it from a black screen, as long as you're online. So I'll just type, see, I can be anywhere in my system home directory again. So I'll just type YUM install YP-bind. Remember, before I do it, YP-bind is currently not installed in my system. YP-bind, sorry, RPM-Q YP-bind. It's not installed. And when I tried with the RPM on the DVD, it gave me dependency issue. So I'll do YUM install YP-bind. So I repeat, this works only when you're online. You see, it went online now. It's looking for the package. You see, processing dependency. The good news about this is that whenever there are dependencies, it will resolve them for you. It does all the hard work. So when you get a question, yes, no, normally, or whatever, normally you type yes because you want to continue. Is this okay? Yes. We don't have much choice, do we? So again, yes. And there we go, complete. You see, it resolved all the dependencies. See, there's reference to YP tools as well. Okay. It also installed the dependency, as you can see here. So it's done, finished. It's already, there's nothing more to do. It's ready to function now. Okay. So now if I do RPM-Q YP-bind. It's installed. And you can see, again, we're not ready to use this now, and we'll see much later what this package does. But the important thing is that I were able with this to install it. Now it's in my system. So here's the yum install command again, very simple. One more thing, I'll check if you have any questions. Now, if you want to avoid those yes/no questions, you may even do this. You may put yum minus y, and minus y for yes. So you put this, it means it won't ask you questions. For all those questions, because waiting for you to type yes, it assumes that you say yes automatically, which is usually the case. So any questions on this yum install technique? But again, I have to say right away, even this one is not always this simple. And we'll explain why immediately. Right? This was a very simple and straightforward example, right? I just said yum installed YP-bind. It took care of everything and installed it. But remember, YP-bind is a system component. It's part of the operating system, which was not installed by default. So it was very easy for CentOS to find this online. But what about programs like PuTTY, Thunderbird, or anything else that you'd like to install? Does it always work like this? You install. So to understand better, let's explain. How does yum install work exactly? So here I have reference to a directory which is etc yum.repos.d. So let's go there and we'll explain. So in this directory, which is the default directory, this is what I have. 6 files initially. What are these? I didn't put these files myself. They were there originally, all right? Everybody should have these files. So a repository or a repo is simply, in this directory here for yum.repos.d, a list of links. These files are simply links that point to servers online. So by default, it has pointers to these CentOS servers online. So when you do yum install, when I earlier did yum install for YP-bind there, what did it do? It checked this repository and tried these links automatically. It tried these 6 links in the order that it finds them. And so it went online, it connected to this service, sent requests to these servers online to see if any of them had this package YP-bind. And of course, at least one of them had it, and that's why it was able to download and install the package. So without these links, yum install would not work, obviously, because the system won't be able to find the package online. It needs to contact relevant servers which are supposed to contain this package. So for packages like YP-bind, which are part of the operating system, the default repos directory contains all the links that you need. So that's why it works very nicely like this. But if you try to install other programs, normally you'll first need to tap commands in your system to update your repository and download some stuff to update your repo. So you'll first find instructions online to download something to update this directory so that it gives you more pointers to find what you're looking for online. And then you'll be able to do yum install. Okay? I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I'll show you another machine I have. Make sure I open the right one here. I think it's this one here. Now, if I go to the same directory on this machine, etc yum.repos.d, and I check ls. No, it's not the right machine. Okay, I just need to remember which machine I've updated the repository on. Let me see. I think I know it. All right, look at this one here. Compared to the one I'm using in my examples, the one I installed at the same time as you did. So this is the machine I've been using, and it has only 6 links in its repository, directory, which are default links. In this one, I have many more. I have those initial 6 plus many more. So where did the errors come from? It's because I did some additional installations on this machine, and then I was looking, for example, for PHP as a package. Okay. So when I went online and I wanted to use YumiStel for those packages, I found things to click on, or instructions to update my repository. And this is how it got updated. So I did not manually copy these files here. I went online, I'm looking for some packages, and they gave me instructions or links to click on to update my repository before I could use YumiStel to get those packages. All right? So in general, that's a procedure to follow. You're looking for a program to install, you want to use YumiStel for it, if possible. So you might need first to go online and first update your repository, follow instructions for a package to update your repository. And then once it's up to date like this, then you'll be able to type YumiStel with the name of the package you're looking for, because it will know which servers to contact online to download that package. All right? So keep that in mind, and you'll come across examples of it. First update your repository and then run YumiStel in general. Any questions there? Okay. So you have seen 3 techniques here for package installation. Now, here we have some exercises. So go online, install PuTTY. I already demonstrated this. So now that you have seen techniques, you may use the same technique as me, download the RPM that I demonstrated, or if you want to practice more with YumiStel, find your way to go to Google with the CentOS machine, which is on the external switch, and try searching for CentOS 7 PuTTY YumiStel. and follow the instructions that you find. So this may involve updating your repository first and then running Yumi style PuTTY. Now, based on this, I'll give you a lab report question in a moment there. So I'll temporarily disable screen sharing. Let's think of any questions you might have. And in a couple of minutes, I'll come back and give you lab report question.